TV18.
By last financial year, India's total exports crossed a new landmark of $400 billion. India is close to signing a potential free trade agreement with the UK. The goal is to seal the deal by Diwali. Another trade pact with Australia is in the making. All of this happened during the tenure of Union Commerce Secretary BVR Subrahmanyam, who retires tomorrow. After graduating from the 1987 IAS batch, he was asked with overseeing the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir, and since then he's been helping steer India's trade policy during the pandemic. Joining us now to look back at his tenure and future prospects for India's trade growth is the man himself, the Commerce Secretary BVR Subrahmanyam. Mr. Subrahmanyam, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Let me start by asking you about where you believe we are poised at this point in time. The last conversation that you and I had, which was a few months ago, you believed that India was in a sweet spot given what we are seeing with the rebalancing of global supply chains. Do you believe that a lot of the work that India needed to do, a lot of the policy bulwark that India needed to put in place to ensure that we do capitalize on that sweet spot has been done?
Thank you, Shereen. Thank you for taking time off and calling me over. Yeah, I'll only say one thing. The sweet spot has actually become sweeter. As days pass by, I think India's attractiveness is increasing. And I had said last time, all the challenges are domestic and not international. We need to gear up and catch the sweet spot. I mean, as things are unfolding, I mean, the EU is actually rechanging and resetting its relationship both with China as well as with Russia. I mean, they're looking desperately for other partners, and who else is there other than India in terms of size and capacity? It's the same all across the world. So as I said, the sweet spot continues, it's becoming sweeter. And the points which I raised last time when I was with you, that we are resetting our trade policy stance, we are becoming far more open, we are embracing the globe with confidence. I think that journey is on. There's recognition now, not just in commerce, but all across government, that it's important that we actually reach out and embrace the world in trade and in finance. And I think that's the way forward. And I'm sure the country currently is fully geared to capitalize on this opportunity.
You said the sweet spot is getting sweeter and that the world is looking for partners outside of China, and India is a beneficiary of this rebalancing. But let me ask you about headwinds at this point in time. Of course, there is the Russia-Ukraine war. There is the volatility of currency markets, the rupee not immune to that either. On the export front, as you leave office in the Commerce Ministry, how much more challenging is it likely to be for India to be able to achieve the kind of targets that it set out for itself?
When we spoke 3 months ago, the global headwinds were there. And as you rightly said, they've actually become more difficult, they've become stronger. But that doesn't mean our opportunities have gone. There is something called a trend, and the trend certainly is either flat or downwards globally. I think there's a lot of pessimism all around. But individual countries are positioned differently in this overall trend. And I think it is what India has to capitalize on. And I think the opportunities are there in the short run. And there are opportunities in the long run. And I think if you need to always distance yourself from the immediate to look at what is there in the long term. So I think in the long term, India is positioning itself well. And as far as the short run is concerned, I am not that terribly pessimistic about what's in store for us on the trade front. I mean, we have an ambitious target this year of $750 billion, which includes both goods and services. Last year, we targeted $400 billion, and we aimed and got $422 billion. And in services, we thought we'll do something like 220 or so, and we did $254 billion. Both put together are $676 billion was our exports. This year, in spite of the headwinds, in spite of the recession in large parts of the world and increasing interest rates and inflation, we are going to touch $470 billion, which is a good $50 billion more than last year as far as merchandise goods are concerned. And services, they're actually rocking, because last year's excellent services performance of $250 billion plus was without travel, tourism, and other elements. They're all, the entire hospitality and contact sectors are coming back. So services are averaging $25 billion a month. We'll easily touch $300 billion. There's no way to believe that we are not going to do $750 billion. The most pessimistic scenario would be $750 billion. It's only going to be higher than that rather than lower. But the important message is that having been flat at $300 billion plus minus 10% for more than a decade, India has broken out of that band. We broke out of 300 billion, touched 422. We are now going for 470. If God is willing, kind, we capitalize on more of these agreements, we'll probably touch even $500 billion this year. But as we extend the trend long term, these recessions will be always followed by again a jump and there'll be a boom again. So these boom and bust cycles are part of economy. But if you look at over a 5-7 year period, I think we're going to touch $1 trillion in goods and $1 trillion in services by 2030. It's certainly going to be that.
$1 trillion in goods and $1 trillion in services by 2030. You feel confident of India being able to coast that trajectory when it comes to exports. But Mr. Subrahmanyam, you talked about these trade deals, and what we saw was a pickup, a gathering of pace finally after several years of stagnation as far as inking fresh trade deals is concerned. The hope is that the UK trade pact will get done by Diwali. The government in the UK itself is facing its own set of challenges, so we don't know what will come of that. But has this been one of the big changes, at least as far as your tenure is concerned, the fact that we finally moved on inking fresh trade deals? And what do you believe the road ahead will look like on this front?
Okay. Whether this change in mindset is attributable to me or not is irrelevant. I think the bigger point is I happen to be in position at a time when the rethink started happening. I think the country regained confidence. It took a while to actually study the impact of other agreements that happened in the past. And based on that, I think it's clearly visible that in the last 1 year, there has been a reset in India's trade policy stance. And that reset is based on confidence, based on Atmanirbharta. We go ahead and sign trade deals with complementary economies. These are countries, we have something called a complementarity index. The trade deals we are negotiating are with countries whose complementarity index is very high. That means our imports match their exports and our exports match their imports. So that is absolutely one of the biggest reasons. And I think these trade deals won't have gone ahead unless there is support absolutely from the top. I think the entire political leadership, the government, all the departments in government are completely behind this strategy. And it's also very clear, India is going to be an importing country in a large number of goods and services for a long time to come. There are a lot of natural resources we don't have. And the only way you compensate for that is actually going in for greater exports. So I think the trade deals open up markets. Market access is our key goal in all trade deals. The UK one, as everybody knows, is in its final stages. We are close to 80-90% done with that. There was a bit of a setback in terms of the changes that were happening at the other end. There was a change of the Prime Minister and the government there. There was an unfortunate the death of the Queen there. So there were certain delays. But in spite of that, I think at the official level, things have been moving. And I think we should be in the last few laps of that agreement. We are not working to a deadline per se, but I think we are working with efficiency, and efficiency automatically ends up throwing up deadlines.
You spoke about PLI schemes, sir. So let me ask you about whether there is a feeling, at least as far as some of these PLI schemes is concerned, that more needs to be put on the table. I'll ask you this in the context of reports suggesting that METI is putting together a proposal to enhance the incentives for hardware manufacturing, to draw in the likes of Apple, etc., to do more here in the country, because there haven't been as many takers as the government would have liked. Do you believe that given the competition from the Vietnams, etc., of the world, and to try and capitalize on the companies that are looking for an alternative to China, more sweeteners will have to be put on the table?
Okay, I'll put it this way. What exactly is the detail of what MITI is doing, I may not be knowing. But the simple point is, PLI is an excellent program. That's the only way you kickstart large-scale manufacturing. We missed this bus 25 years ago through reservation for SSIs. It's the first time that government has looked at scale seriously, and I think that's a very good thing. If we get onto that track, it'll be good for us. Now, coming to as far competition is concerned, I mean, semiconductors, our competition is actually United States. I mean, they've come up with a $50 billion plus scheme for actually getting chip manufacturing back home. So it's not only the developing countries, it's the developed world which are in competition in some strategic areas. So I'm sure there will be efforts to get more and more of these sectors back home for manufacturing. But the real big competition is actually our neighborhood. It's Vietnam, it's Indonesia, it's also our near neighbors in South Asia who actually want to attract a lot of investment. And I think the PLIs are doing a good job. And wherever tweaking is necessary, I mean, there's a PLI which is going to be there for our next year, the International Year of Millets. So there'll be PLIs for millets to promote actually healthy eating. So it's all not necessarily in, high fancy sectors. It can be also very mundane sectors. The other is a lot of the stuff which are actually showing electronics, auto, solar, PV. I think these are all areas where once the shift takes place, we will grow on our own. The PLI will then vanish. It's important to do that initial shift. I mean, we were, for example, I'll keep talking about APIs. We were a big manufacturer of APIs in the past. But at some point, it was found that this is too much of a problem continuing with APIs. Our chaps shifted down the stream into manufacturing final pharma, and APIs went elsewhere without realizing that you can actually get choked out of the pharma market completely. So I think the scheme is there. It is constantly tweaked to ensure the results we want. I think it's a very focused scheme. It's monitored at the highest level by the cabinet secretary very periodically. All of us actually sit on those committees. So I think it's got off to a good start.
Well, that is the Commerce Secretary, outgoing Commerce Secretary. He retires tomorrow and will be taking over at the ITPO. But with that, it is time